Quality of Mercy is another anti-war, wartime story for this show. It's a subject that Rod Serling had a lot of experience with, considering he was a veteran of World War II. We see some familiar and recognizable faces show up here, in a pretty straightforward script with a clear moral. However, there's a pretty big aspect to the episode that, let's just say it doesn't hold up well. In the Philippines on August 6, 1945, a worn-down U.S. platoon has cornered a group of heavily wounded Japanese soldiers into a cave. When the young Lieutenant Cattell shows up, he seems eager to order the troops to enter the cave and wipe out the enemy. Sergeant Casarano and the rest of the wary Americans, though, aren't too keen on engaging in another battle that is ultimately pointless to the outcome of the war and will end in needless deaths on both sides. Cattell admonishes them and is adamant that they attack, appearing as if he has something to prove. As they prepare for the assault, the lieutenant drops his binoculars. When they're picked up and handed back to him, he sees that he's now with Japanese soldiers, and they've got a group of US troops pinned down in a cave. It's May of 1942, and Cattell is now referred to as Lieutenant Yamuri. Confused and disoriented, Yamuri is ordered by his superior to help attack the cave and wipe out the beaten-down Americans, no matter the cost. Let's just get this out of the way first. They made up eventual Golden Globe winner Dean Stockwell to look like a Japanese man for that sequence of the show, and it's a bad look. Back in 1961, I'm sure not a lot of people were surprised by this. It was the same year of Mickey Rooney's appearance as Mr. Yuniyoshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's, after all. Now that's much, much worse than this. That was playing into stereotypes for comedy. Cattell's transformation into Yamuri at the very least has noble intentions. I'm not saying the performance and makeup aren't offensive.
I ask you a question. Where are we?
Americans. 20 or 30 Americans. They are wounded in their cell. Perhaps what? Perhaps we can let them surrender. Will it shorten the war by a week, by a day, by an hour?
But Serling's script, based on an idea by Sam Rolfe, is a morality tale about having empathy for other people, specifically enemies within war. Considering how the Japanese were demonized during and after World War II, this seemed to me like a very progressive statement in the early 1960s. It was just handled the wrong way on screen. It would have helped the episode immensely if they had just cast a Japanese actor to play Yamuri. It wouldn't have been difficult to let the audience know that it's actually the Cattell character underneath. Show him in a reflection or give him some inner thoughts in Stockwell's voice or something. There were easy ways around that issue. This may have aged poorly, but even at the time, a better job could have been done, and it's a bit of a black eye on a series that had strong morals at the center of a good portion of its stories. This wouldn't be the last time a controversial episode involving Japanese race relations in the United States would take center stage. Just wait until we talk about The Encounter from Season 5. This was director Buzz Kulik's 7th episode, and it's a major come down from how great his previous one, A Game of Pool, was. In fact, it was likely his worst show up to this point. And let me be clear, while the yellow face is a major mark against this installment, if you took that out of the equation, this was ultimately a pretty dull, even redundant at times, war story. There's nothing special about the characters or cinematography outside of a few weird push-ins and extreme close-ups. The writing, while well-intentioned, isn't great, and the acting, while decent from the returning Albert Salmi, isn't anything special. But hey, a pre-Star Trek Leonard Nimoy was in here for a few lines, so that's a cool tidbit.
They say that's their limit.
In addition to Albert Salmi coming back from his more significant turn in Execution, Jerry Fujikawa would also show up in a more memorable episode, To Serve Man, which we'll talk about later this month. Yamuri argues that the Americans are wounded and not a threat, hoping to convince his superior to bypass them. In a speech similar to the one Cattell gave Casarano, the captain is determined to kill his nation's enemies. He pushes past Yamuri to lead the charge, and after a moment of sulking, the lieutenant bends down to pick up his broken binoculars. Suddenly, he's back with the US troops in 1945 and is seen as Cattell once again. Before he can explain what happened, the platoon gets a call to evacuate their position. The US just dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and they think it'll end the war in a couple days. Having learned his lesson, Cattell hopes to never be put in that position again, as his bloodlust is quelled and replaced with compassion for his enemy. Again, it's a virtuous enlightenment that the main character ends on, and having served in the Philippines during the Second World War, I'm sure Rod Serling felt a strong connection to this material. It's just not a very compelling episode. If you're looking for more substantial wartime stories, check out The Purple Testament or something with a heavier Twilight Zone flavor like Judgment Night. Bottom line, there's more than one reason to skip this episode. I'll see you next time, when we explore what's really in the dark, deep in the shadows of the Twilight Zone.